He was a unique individual and incredibly special to all of us. He was very gifted, both intellectually and creatively. But perhaps most of all, what I would say about Marco is that he had a beautiful soul. And he expressed that in his music and through his love of tango. And sometimes when we're walking through the halls, we imagine we still see him here because he is part of the conservatory and he always will be. So we're here to remember him tonight, but I know that he is always going to be with us in this building and as part of our school. So thank you, Marcia, for being here this evening.
Thank you.
And I know there are a lot of people who are going to want to speak this evening, so I'm going to invite Nancy Goodman.
I'd like to read a biography of Marco that his wife wrote. It was an education for all of us, and I think you'll be amazed at the history of this Renaissance man that we're honoring this evening. January 4th, 1932. A son is born to Ernestine and Adolfo in Turin, Italy. He would be their only child. Shortly after Italy joined Germany in World War II, Turin was under attack from British bombardments. Marco was 8 years old. In the years that followed, he saw death and destruction firsthand. He recounted many a story, some sad, some amusing, one of which recounts a night of bombardments. After returning from a shelter, Marco and his mother re-entered their apartment to find it amazingly undamaged, at which point his rickety piano gave a final shudder and collapsed onto the floor. It could no longer support itself under all the tremors. Aside from fear, folly, and famine, he grew to enjoy the simplest pleasures with gusto. At home, his mother would have him play the piano while she and a few of her lady friends would dance. He began to understand the pleasures his playing could bring, as he was always rewarded by a pat on the head or a piece of candy. When his repertoire ran out, he would improvise to prolong the sessions. They always included a tango or two. This was the start of serious composing years later. The war was finally over and Italy was making a rapid recovery. Marco entered the University of Torino. His father, who was CEO at Fiat Trucking, wanted Marco to study engineering so that he could find a position for him at Fiat. After a year at the university, Marco changed his course of study, much to his father's displeasure. He said he couldn't fit in at Fiat under a cloud of nepotism. He graduated instead with a doctorate in political science and later went on to the University of Milan to broaden his education. It was difficult to stump him with any questions about history, since he read it for pleasure all his life. At the University of Torino, he joined its champion rowing team, winning many medals that still hang in his study, with a pen and ink study that he drew of the team. Traveling with his team for competitions all over Europe exposed him to new sights, sounds, and people, and stimulated him to travel his entire life. His knowledge of history led him to write his first novel about the Crusades. He also wrote regular columns for several magazines on music and politics. This year, a town of his ancestry called Loo, that originated in Roman times, is celebrating their publication of a book he wrote about his family dating from the 16th century. The book is filled with facts about Loo that he researched over the years. The town and the mayor, who has edited the book, are showing their appreciation through this event. His career as an entrepreneur brought him to America, where his energy and invention was well rewarded in the import-export business. He later married his wife of 21 years, Marcia Stegel, who worked with him. After retiring, he joined the Westchester Conservatory of Music as a student to revive his classical music studies and explore other musical interpretations, such as jazz. All this eventually led to his hobby as a composer of tango music. He created a tango for 6 pianos, 24 hands, at the 2005 celebration of the Music Conservatory of Westchester's program at Lincoln Center's Alice Tully Hall. The success of this event led him to continue composing. A group of musicians was later formed of talented and dedicated students and professionals that have remained loyal to him and his music. The group is called Tango Quartero. They honor him by continuing to play his music. Marco died on June 18, 2016, after a courageous struggle against cancer. He leaves 2 sons, 4 grandchildren, a devoted wife, and many friends. He was truly a Renaissance man. And now I'd like to introduce Victor Lagama, who will play a piece that he composed in honor of Marco and his son Dylan.
I met Marco as his piano tuner, which is how I've met many people in the last 40 years. I've been tuning pianos professionally for 40 years, and it has enabled me to meet people such as Marco. And the interesting thing is that I really spend so little time with them in the course of that 16 years. It takes about an hour to tune a piano, yet got to know him extremely well. And we would converse practically the whole time. He'd say, let me leave the room so you can concentrate on tuning the piano. He occupies a space in my life that I will never forget. Just the ease of the way he lived his life, the passion he had for his music, yet the simplicity with which he approached people, never condescending. It's a great moment for me to have written this piece for him. The moment I heard that he had passed away through an email, I went to the piano. I was a part of the Tango Quartero for one performance. I had mentioned to Marco, after having gone to a performance of the tango that I was not a part of, that I played the accordion. And that's all he needed to hear. He immediately wrote a piece for accordion, cello, and violin, which we performed here and was recorded on video. It was with Kathy and Chris. And it was a great moment. I know that we didn't approach each other on doing this piece tonight because it was a very complicated piece. And I don't know if we could have done it without him kind of hovering over us at the rehearsals as he did. But it is for posterity, it's recorded, it's there. Hopefully we'll play it again. So this evening I'd like to play this piece for Marco. It is a tango, it's a very slow tango, but I also incorporated a swing tempo in it because he was very much appreciative of my jazz playing. And I would always play for him. He'd ask me, he was interested in jazz, so he was always asking me questions about jazz harmony and things like that. So I threw a swing section in for him as well. And I'm pleased to have my son Dylan play it with me this evening.
I have only really ever played classical music, and I only was ever really interested in classical music. And I met Marco at the Conservatory after he had written that tango for 6 pianos, and he said, I would like to compose a piece of flute music for you. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I've never played a tango, but nobody's ever offered to compose a piece for me. You know, that would be really cool. So I said I would be delighted to play whatever he wrote. Tonight I'm going to play the first tango he ever wrote for me and the last piece that he ever wrote for me, which happens not to be a tango, but something completely different. I think he called it a bagatelle. I would like to tell just one Marco story of many I could tell. Marco liked to compose in keys involving flats. And therefore, on the flute, you have a little nasty configuration when you're moving from a C to an E flat, low C to an E flat. You've got to slide your pinky, which isn't your best finger in the first place, over 3 keys, holding them all down. Somehow, this little thing, Marco put in every single one of his pieces. So I finally told him, Marco, if you write that C to E flat combination once more, I am never playing another piece of yours ever. So I put the fear of God into him, and he didn't do it again. Now, I'm playing in a concert October 16th. I'm playing 2 pieces, one by Bloch, one by Schumann. Wouldn't you know that both of them have this E to C, E flat to C slide? And I can tell you that I can do it really well now, and I have Marco to thank for it.
we say about Marco? What a remarkable man he was. We all loved him so much. He would walk into a rehearsal and he could bring people together who would never have known one another, would have never been able to play together in any other arrangement. And he would bring us together and he would create a family and he would create fun. The piece that Zach played in, Zach was about 13, I think, and I think the combination was piano, violin, cello, bass, sax, flute, and drums. I mean, really, it was amazing. And Marco would help us with also the help of Sidney Hugh, who often was our coach, and Hiroshi. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name right. I'm old. But playing with Marco was one of the greatest gifts that I had in my life. Marco had a way of making each of us feel like we were special, and we were talented, and we were musicians, and we were amazing. The first time I played a recital, it was an adult recital in 2007, and I played one of his pieces, the first piece I played, and I had a lot of trouble learning the tango, because I too had been trained only in classical. It took me about 6 months to learn the first piece, and even then it was pretty rough. But afterwards he sent me an email and called me Catherine the Great. And I went, okay, I'll believe it if you believe it. And gosh, he had a way of believing in us. He would say, we're amateurs, don't worry about it. But he treated us like professionals. And he helped us bring out music in a way that I'd never had before. I never had anyone who could help me feel as much like a musician as Marco could. So he was an amazing friend, one of the best friends I ever had. And knowing Marco was a highlight of my life, and I know that's true for everyone here. He was such a special person. So this piece, A Woman in a Red Dress, was, I think, one of the early pieces. He composed it in 2007. And again, like Nancy said, it was like so cool. You're composing a piece for me? No, I'm the violinist, but for me, wow. So it was just, we played this piece so many times, and I've been really grateful to Tom because it's not an easy piece to put together, and he's done an amazing job. It's the next best thing to Marco, and I want to thank him.
Nancy emailed me out of the blue last October or November, I can't remember exactly. She picked my name out of the chamber music directory, and Marco followed up in an email. My only background in tango was having promised my wife that I would learn to dance it. I've never actually made good on that promise. But I was afraid that there were no formal scores to tango, and Marco emailed me, no, it's not like jazz, and FedExed me 6 pieces. And when I looked at them, I realized that it was very serious and very good. The day I met him in person was here outside in the lobby. I was looking out the window. He came up behind me, and I turned around, and there he was, grinning, saying, "Hi, I'm Marco." And that was the beginning of actually major development in my life. The tryout, though it wasn't called that, seemed to work out pretty well, and we were playing approximately bi-monthly. I can't say that I really learned to know Marco well. That's a disappointment to me. There just wasn't time. I had a very good feeling about him personally, and as time went by, I grew, my appreciation of his music grew. Once he came over to our house in Dobbs Ferry and to go over some pieces that I hadn't seen before, and my wife told me afterwards she was very pleased to see me taking instruction from somebody. Since adolescence, I've had, well, she knows the history, but since adolescence of rejecting suggestions from other pianists, particularly, and others, besides pianists. I knew from the beginning that Marco had health issues, but he was so energetic and enthusiastic about things. When he became ill again in the winter and spring, and we learned that death seemed likely, I can tell you there were tears and a few breakdowns during the rehearsals. After Marco passed away this summer, we began performing this performance. I've noticed that we've been speaking and acting as though he's still here. We say, does Marco play it this way, etc. It's been in the present tense, and the more I think about it, he is still here. It's in the music, and it won't go away.
This is a piece Marco wrote as Morado, and it means doing something very well, I think. Got that right, Marcia? Yes. Good. So it sounds like a sexy woman, but it's not.
Maestro. Your melodies meander through Buenos Aires back alleys, but really, in a decade, you've taken us elsewhere too. Little cafes on the Adriatic where antique trios play, nostalgic nights in Havana, midnight reveries of insomnia and yowling cats, red-dressed women who entice, encourage, reject, moaning mothers, clutching couples, winter dreams, waltzes, frenzies, tango visions. You bribed me with chocolate, temptation indeed, and cajoled me with teasing threats. If you can't play it, Yo-Yo Ma can. You were our ringleader, our maestro, the father of our ragtag musical family, and always that rhythmic drive, that brooding minor key urgency propulsive. Your songs dance darkly through life. If I only had 15 years more, had started 15 years earlier, you once told me. I know, but we settled for what we had, which was more than good enough. Serpentine legs slide against each other, ankles interlock, then separate. The heart pulses and throbs. This tango goes on, the mystery of melody and urgent rhythm, the mystery of here and then not here, and the lovely thing you left behind.
I'd like to thank John Chapman and Ally and Katie and Jean and the Conservatory staff for putting together this event and all that went with it, and all the invitations and welcoming you all here. And in closing, I'd like to read this statement by Marcia. Even though the maestro has left the stage, our memories and his melodies will linger on. Goodbye, Marco.
Very nice. Good.